Okay, you can hear me. It's been it's been a weird, emotional, not roller coaster, emotional, like a series of revelations within my emotions and my moods. Not me not focusing or attaching too hard to these things. Like before this, I was planning on doing this live and speaking, but I kept postponing it, like procrastinating, because I was like, "Ah, what do I want to say? You know? And it's like I'm in this in between state of saying shit with planning behind it, and some of it's good, and you have to kind of repeat and form a habit or like a creative ritual with the ways in which you want to explore things. But the series of like revelations I've had, or like emotional revelations, is like when I start something, a creative act, where I begin to express myself. Um, it's a very formless feeling in the beginning. It's like, okay, I don't really necessarily have any reason. Maybe I saw a vision or thought of something that started it or got the ball rolling. But you almost have to convince yourself in the first beginning acts of like this is something, right? And I noticed that this this like focus is very hard to get because of like the way in which we've forced ourselves to cater towards like an audience that doesn't exist. Because literally, as the time I'm recording this, no one is watching this. I mean, if you look past my past lives before this, there's a few views here and there. Maybe I'm like rewatching a jam or I had a topic, but my my intention with expressing and creative acts is to enter multiple mediums at once, to sort of form the entirety of what is inside me, or to at least externalize it, not to form it, but to externalize it in some sort of way. And when you're in those first beginning acts, you have to convince yourself, like, okay, this has meaning. And I guess in a way, these sort of live videos are this is the process of those beginning acts of developing your own sort of voice, hearing yourself externalize it, which is a there's a difference between thinking and externalizing something, or like externalizing a thought. And for me, that's been like night and day in my creative acts. It's like, when I'm analyzing my creative act, the creative act doesn't necessarily come out. And the more I think about that beginning act, or the more I start to give it meaning and I don't go back to that first like formless convincing of myself, like this is something worthwhile, worth meaning, worth time, worth attention and intention. That's the series of revelations I'm going towards. It's like I get lost in trying to create and have meaning behind something, and then I have to go back to that revelation of like, oh my god, it's not that it has meaning; it's determined meaning by me. And I'm realizing is that when it's not that I'm not talking about this in like the sense of like this is the way, like my way is the way over this other way. It's not. It's just how humans have developed and adapted to expressing themselves. I noticed that a lot of humans are expressing themselves through things that were not of their own creation, not of their own thought process, usually not something they're in control of, whether that's a physical or mental sort of system or matrix that they have to enter and to convince, to be convinced. They're looking to be convinced rather than convincing themselves. And the fixation a lot of people have, and I think this is kind of, I don't know if you could draw a line or put categories to it necessarily, but there is, I guess, when you're speaking, you have to talk in generalizations at some point. Um, but I think that's the difference between an artist, someone who creates or expresses themselves without, not without hesitation, but without the ability to get stuck in the stagnation. They stagnate, but they're moving past the stagnation. And what causes the stagnation in this timeline, I guess, in this it's July 25th, 2026, and what causes the stagnation, right? What causes people to just have the inability to express themselves, the inability to see outside of their sort of habitual, ritualistic habits, their actions that, you know, have dictated their lives or have recently developed because of the stagnation. So I'm sitting there contemplating why, right? And what could I do not to be attached to outcome or attached with people's identity, but to be vulnerable enough to help those along the way. And sometimes you have to be quiet when you find people trying to develop their way or find their way. Sometimes you have to express yourself and give them a little guidance. It's not necessarily manipulation, but it's like you're vulnerable. I don't know what the fuck that was. But you're like vulnerable. Your vulnerability and raw expression and creative act is something people witness um, more than they can understand or grasp in language. And if you notice, our entire world is dictated by the right words people are saying, how they're saying it. Not necessarily what they're saying, but how they're saying it, who they're saying it to, what's the audience, what's the effect of their words and their determined meaning. And then you come back to the beginning, right? That sort of mental, that sort of mental matrix that I just kind of put us on. You have to come back to that beginning always of being a child, and smiling at the absurdity, smiling at your understanding, but smiling at like other people's understanding as well, and laughing and playing and having the vulnerability to just be like, well, let's go explore, you know. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's really not. It's something that I'm working towards, and I'm really just trying to find ways not to, I guess, lose my sanity. Each person that interacts with me, I mean, whether I have feelings about them or not, I mean, they chose it, and I choose the people I interact with, and that has meaning. And instead of being transactional in our interactions and trying to gain something from someone or trying to measure up their determined meaning and see if it matches yours is pointless. Because what doesn't resonate. And usually, what I find is when you sort of begin to pull back from the resonation or resonating, or when you're pulling back from, like a relationship or, some sort of interaction with people or situation with people, and you're not resonating anymore. I mean, maybe you were resonating with this group or whatever. It becomes an ego battle of like externalizing your higher order or your way and proving that their way is better. I mean, we've all been in this sort of ego battle before, whether we were conscious of it or not. But it's something we can bring awareness to. That's for sure. And you have to just enter the tunnel, enter the maze, enter the labyrinth, whatever you want to say. You have to begin the first page. You have to, read that first page of the book to get to the last page of the book. We've become so fixated on like short term ideas, short term understandings, that reading an entirety, or I guess, an entire story in its entire being, in its entire essence, its entire atmosphere, is being lost and forgotten. And I think it's because no one can determine their own meaning anymore. I mean, that's a broad statement, but like confidence in their meaning. And how do you begin that is to formlessly express yourself. Use the tools at hand, use, all the things you know. Don't be attached to them, no, but use them. And then just literally let loose. Stop giving it more thought than that. Because, right, we're back at the beginning again. We're back at that beginning of the tunnel, beginning of the maze, beginning of the labyrinth, where you have to, like, reason with yourself sometimes. But when you act, you act. You don't think. And when you think, you don't act. Action is the only way forward because we've done all the thinking in this world. Sure, there's more. There's always going to be more thoughts, but there's been a hindrance, a stagnation of action, of expression. I mean, in all forms, in all forms, in all ways. Carry on.